Hi guys, it's Carl from Monkey Mod. So upon request, I have decided to make this assembling video for the LDT FTM3 BCM Receiver. Alright, that's a very long name. But anyway, this is the BCM shell. This is how it looks like when you buy it. You have a very nice box to protect its contents. And a BCM logo on this side. Now, this video guide will probably be applicable to the very similar M4 type shells. Any of the FTMs, the TTM4s, probably will be around the same. So let me just walk you through on how to disassemble, how to assemble this thing. Right, so when you open it, you have this presented in a pretty nice protecting box, so your parts won't be flopping around, especially the lower and upper receivers. The fittings are kept below, so you have a pack of this. So we open it and go through the parts bit by bit. So anyhow, let me just take out the lower and then the upper in the packs. Right, so this is the upper. We have nylon, have a BCM logo up there, here. And then this is the lower. Has a BCM logo engraved, but it is pretty shallow, so yeah, so pretty much it. Now, this is very likely that you have to prepare some tools, some basic tools, for this assembling guide. For some cases, you might even have to prepare sandpapers and files. So we'll see how it goes as we move along. So this is the fitting packs. In it, it should contain all the parts that you need to, complete the shell. So let's see. Alright, so this is a dummy bolt release, but it's not so it's not so suitable for this application, because if you already seen my previous video on the BCM shell, this will flops around the receiver, the lower receiver. So if you purchase from us, the LTT actually supply us with this replacement. This is made of nylon, not metal, unfortunately. So this piece, you can cut this piece off, this part off, and then it will just stays there snugly and not moving around like this piece here. Right, I'll go through with you in a bit also. So okay, this pretty much not that useful, but if this is the only one that you have, so I guess you have to stick with it, I guess. Otherwise you have a receiver without the bolt release. Right, the charging handle, the Radiant style, the one that comes with the BCM logo as well. What else? Alright, this is the fitting for the charging handle, and you have the springs, and then you have the small little nylon piece that push the dust cover open. Just put here. What's this? Alright, this is a forward assist. It's made of metal. The forward assist comes with the forward assist itself, a spring, and a small pin. Alright, what's this? This contains the small parts, the few dummy pins, and the spring needed to install the upper receiver pin, I believe. A metal fire selector, a metal magazine release, a magazine catch, magazine release, whichever, made of metal as well, and the dust cover. The dust cover is made of metal as well, so it needs a little bit of assembling, so I'll go through with you guys in a bit. This is the steel pin, BCM engraved the dummy bolt. Now this is the part that I mentioned that it needs a bit of a cutting here and there and some custom fitting so that it will fit inside the receiver and functionings. I mean, you can pull the charging handle and it will move. Right, so the dust cover rod, and then a metal trigger guard with all the pieces needed, and that's pretty much it. Right, so let's start with the lower. It seems to be easier. Right, so lower, let's see, okay, we shall start with the fire selector. Now it contains a lot of small pieces that you have to be careful not to lose. This spring is for the ball bearing, the bearing here, so that it makes a click sound when you push the fire selector. And then this is a very nice, a metal fire selector cover to goes on this side. And alright, I think that's pretty much it. Let me just install this, show you how it's done. Alright, first grab the fire selector itself, and you have a spring, put it inside the slot there, like so. Yep. And then this is the tricky part because this is the little metal ball bearing here. So what you have to do is pretty much put the bearing, the ball bearing, above the spring like this, and then very carefully you can do it this way so the ball bearing won't fly away. Now you can see the little knobs here. So you just pretty much align and put up there, and just hold it this way. So if I push a button, you should feel the clicks. Can't really hear it now because it's not tightened yet. Right, so then you grab the small piece here that pushes the selector plate on the gearbox, and make sure the orientation is correct because it's a D shape. So just put in there like so. I'm sure you can see it. The metal selector plate in there, and then with your hand holding it this way so that it won't jump out. Now you have to use a very small screwdriver. Right, so it's a bit tricky because right, so just tighten it. Now remember not to over tighten this because the screw is very small and it is not, it's not made of very strong steel or anything. It's just pot metals. So if you over tighten it and it breaks, and then so sorry, but you have a broken fire selector and you have to buy a replacement because the broken bits of the screw will stuck within. Even though they give one spare screw, but once the broken bit stuck inside, that's pretty much it. You can't really do anything unless you can use a dremel and slowly drill it out. But yeah, it's gonna be a bummer. Right, so once that's installed, you can try it. Now it should click in place. Right, so that's done. Just remember not to over tighten the screw because yeah, it's disaster if you do. Right, that's it for the fire selector and you're done. Now let me just keep spare parts. Right, then the next step is just pretty much this little cover here. Just push it in. Now, this part, is the potential of it coming off during usage because the gearbox is right here. So as you use, the vibration might cause this part, this piece to come off. But it is pretty tight when it's fully pushed in. I don't think that's needed. But if you want a peace of mind, just one drop of a super glue will do the job, because you don't really want it to be permanent as well, because this is the only way to get access to the file selector, so you probably don't want that to be permanent. So yeah, now that's pretty much done for file selector, both sides. Now we're going to move on to the small dummy pin. Where is it? Right here. So in this pack, you'll find 4 small bits here. Let me just get it out. So you'll find here there is 2 pair of a different size dummy pin. It's supposed to be pin, but this is dummy unit. So you see that on the receiver itself, on the lower receiver itself, there's one here, the bigger one, and then one here, the smaller one. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 that you have to insert this little dummy pin in. Right, so let's see. Now the bigger one goes to here. Now of course, if you have the I don't know what it's called, the pin, the custom pin that you want to install, then it shows. You know what? Let me just show you. One moment. Like for example, you want to install this type of a pin, then you can forgo this step. You don't need to install this pin, because this, you see this here, this is the pin here. This pin will go on to here. Let me just show you quickly how it looks like. Right, so this pin here is going to sit in this little hole here, just there, and then that's where you lock the gearbox in place with this little thing here. So yeah, depending on what you want to do, you may not want to insert this pin, the dummy pin. Alright, so let's just move on with installing it. Now you will find that it can be quite difficult to push it in. So what I recommend to do is, now using a pair of a plier, or something that can apply force. So I would actually put a piece of a cardboard over, using this, so it doesn't scratch the receiver, and then just press it in. Then it should fit in nicely, like so. Here, it's not completely flush yet. Let me just give it another push. Right, now it's completely flush. So repeat this step for all the other 4 pins, and then you're done with it. Right, so all the 4 dummy pins is installed. 3, and then the 4th. Right, so that's pretty much done. So next we want to do is we're going to install the trigger guard. Now for your trigger guard, you have a couple of components. You have a couple of pins here, and then a spring, and then a pin that locks it into the receiver. And they give you a spare spring as well. So how this is installed, this is the part that it starts to get tricky, because some parts are not that well manufactured, so they may not fit into the trigger guard. We'll just see how it goes. So first, you take the longer and thinner pin. Right, let's see. Now you have to determine which is the right orientation. Right, this probably is for the pin. So because the size is actually different, you have to find the smaller side. In this case is this one, because this side I tested with the pin and it goes in nicely, and then which means this part is the part where you install the little mechanisms. So just grab the thinner type. On the thinner end, let's see, the thinner end, you insert it, let's see, this way. Right, so once it's installed correctly, now you should see that there's a little, the pin juts up only a little bit here, and then it doesn't force off. So this is how it works. So if you install it the wrong way, let's say you install it the other way around, then you won't have the little thing jutting out, the pin. So make sure that it's installed correctly. Make sure the pin is jutting out a little here. I hope the camera can catch it. Yeah. Right, so after that, you just grab one of the spring, just put it in there, like so that it keeps the pins out. And then the other side of the pin, now you see that this pin is actually in a tapered shape. So the smaller shape goes in first. Now it's not fully inserted yet. Make sure it is fully inserted, otherwise the thing will jump off. So now again, for this, I'll be using the plier again to push it in. Now I always use a garbage cardboard to do this, because then it won't leave any scratch mark on the items I want to work on itself. So just make sure the pin is all the way in, like this, and then just test it. Now this is sort of an irreversible process, so one that's this pin is in, it's going to be very difficult to get it out. So just test, then this pin should be spring loaded now. Right, so now we can now install the trigger guard to the to the lower receiver now. So how this goes is, you see that on the trigger guard installation part, only one part here has no hole. So this is where the flat part goes. Right, so this is spring loaded. This is where it goes in first. Now this part is going to be a bit tricky, because it's not likely that you can actually put it in there nicely. You will have to pry it open a bit, and you have to wiggle it here and there so that it fits, because yeah, the fitting is not that perfect. Even the back side here, I have to force it in, and then you have to do the same for the front part. Now as you push it in, you will have to hold and keep the spring loaded pin here down, so that it can go in. Right, once it's in, you should look something like this. You will be able to peek through the hole here that the pin is, engaged, so that you can't actually push it out. Right, so now align this side of the hole so your pin will be able to get in. I will usually do this just to make sure that the holes are all aligned before I punch the pins in. Right, so this is the pin. It's a roll pin. So usually, to make the job easier, again, I will use this plier, and I would do this. Now this is just to make one side of the pin thinner, tapered, so that it can be inserted into the receiver much more easier. Now this is a bit difficult, because yeah, it requires some patience and adjustment. Now just keep checking as you punch the pin in, just to make sure that the hole is still aligned, so you won't damage anything, because remember, this is a nylon, and nylon versus metal is not going to end well. So right now it still looks good. Let me just continue punching it in. Right, and that's completely in. Fit flush. Alright, so that's done. Trigger guard is done. So let's see what else. Alright, so now we will install the dummy bolt catch into the receiver. So from the pack that you have, where is it? Right, this pack, there is a little screw there. That's all you need, because they provide with this nylon bolt release here. So now before you actually install, you want to make sure that the screw can actually go into the holes here, because sometimes the hole may not be up to specs. So you want to clean that up. Now this part is a bit tricky because it's not really good positions for any kind of tools to go into. So if you have a long Allen key, that will help out a lot. Right, so once the screw completely passed through the first, the bits here, then you can start getting it out and install the bolt. Now this part is just to make sure that the screw can get in, because otherwise you might have to get a file or a Dremel or something just to enlarge the hole just enough for the screw to be able to get through. So as mentioned, depending on your configurations, you might have to cut this part off. This entire thing, you might have to cut this piece off so that it won't block your gearbox or anything. But if you are going to use the LDT2 or the LDT3 gearbox, you probably don't need to do that, because the gearbox itself has a space for this part to pass through. So if you are going to use say a Fighting Bros 3.0 gearbox, you will have to cut this part off. So once that part is off, and for example I have one here installed, it will look something like this, and then it wouldn't flop around too much. Right, so I have this part cut off already. So okay, apparently you still have to cut this part off, because it doesn't actually sit in nice enough that it will allow you to screw it in and secure it, because this part is actually blocking. So I guess I will have to cut this part off. Just give me a moment. Alright, I'm back. So I've cut off the unneeded part here. So let's try again and fit it. Now you really have to make sure that the holes is aligned before you start tightening, because again, you might damage something accidentally. Right, and done. So once you have a gearbox installed, then this part will be secured by the gearbox, and then it will just stay where it is. It won't be flopping too much around. So that's done. And then the next step is the pin, the front pin that locks the upper receiver, because this pin has a little mechanism, pretty neat. So let's just get out the front pin that locks the upper receiver. You can notice that there's a little groove here. Alright, so you'll be needing these two parts here, a spring and then a small pin here. So what you have to do is, if you take a look at the lower receiver, this part here, there's this hole here, there's a hole there. Now you just slide the spring in, like so, and then grab the pin. The round side should face outside, and then there's a square, and then that's where it goes in, like this. So like this, and then you just push it in. Right, so once that's done, now you want to be careful not to shoot it out. So with the pin in your hand here, you just sort of do this, and once that's done, the spring-loaded pin there will keep the receiver pin in place. So once it's in and you try to push out, it will stop there, so you don't have to take this part out. Right, so that's done. Let's see what else. I think that's pretty much it for the lower. Now we'll be working on the upper itself. Right, so let's just put this aside. So the upper is a bit more trickier than the lower. There's more parts here, and then there's some parts that you have to do some modification before you can fit them in. Right, so let's start with the forward assist. So for assist package, you should get a small pin, a roll pin, a spring, and then the forward assist itself. Now, the problem that I have usually is this forward assist hole is too tight. And then once the pin, the forward assist is installed, even though it's spring loaded, the spring will not be strong enough to push the pin, the forward assist. Like, yeah, it's kind of stuck. So, right, so what I would do, I would get a Dremel to just slightly enlarge this hole a little bit. If you don't have a Dremel, you can also get a round file, hand file, just to give it a few push, and then hopefully the forward assist would be smooth. Now, of course, this is optional because this serves absolutely no purpose. It's just there for details. But if you want to be a perfectionist and you want the springy feel when you push the forward assist, then yeah, you have to work on that. So I'm going to use a Dremel and just work on this a little bit, and I'll be right back. Alright, and I'm back. So I just used a Dremel, just gave it a few runs, and then now it fits smoothly. So once that's done, you want to make sure all the holes are clear. Right. So this with the pin, with the spring in. Now let's just test. Right now, it moves, so that's perfect. So we want to make sure that this cuts out here. This place is where it can be locked by the pin. So we want to make sure this side faces the receiver side, basically where the pin sits. Right, so same deal. I will use the plier to make one side thinner. Right, just so that it can be slide in more easily. Right, so once the pin sit in, it should secure the forward assist. Right, so that's done. Then next step, the dust cover. Right, so dust cover the rod. You get some small packages here as well. Now these are all essential. So what you want to do is you have to assemble the dust cover first. Now to do that, there's some components here. This is a spring to keep the dust cover open. Some clip here to secure the dust cover rod. There's two grooves here and there. And then the mechanism cover, and then the dust cover lock, and then the spring for it, and the screws. Right, so let me show you how it's done. So first you grab the dust cover itself. On this side, this is where the lock is installed, like so. Now, sometimes the dust cover may not be that well manufactured, so the lock does not slide up and down smoothly, so you might have to use a sandpaper or a file to clear the burrs or anything. Now, just to make sure that this lock can move freely within. So once that the lock is in, it should look like this here. So once that's done, you grab the little spring that they provide, and then basically it sits in here. Now you want to be careful to insert it properly so that it doesn't fly out, like so. So this spring is what keeps the lock loaded. And then you grab the little cover here on this side. Then you can see two teeth there that you can insert it through this hole. So when that's done, it should look something like this. right? So then you can tell that there's a little hole here for you to secure the secure the mechanism. So again, do not over tighten this part, because this part can break. Alright, I have a problem already. So apparently this little screw here is a bit too long for this cover to be tightened. So do not use force, because that would definitely break the screw. So what you have to do now is, if you have a hand file, I will shorten the screw. Shorten it just by a bit, just so enough that it will be able to lock and tighten the dust cover piece here. So I'll be right back. I'll be running the drummer just to shorten it a bit. Right, so see you guys in a bit. Alright, so I'm back. I just did a bit of a shortening of the screw, and then now it's alright. Now it may not necessary for you to do this, because this might be this particular unit's problem, because you know the screw thread is pretty small, so maybe there are some manufacturing defects or something. But once that's done, it should go in nicely. But in case something went wrong, the screw did broke off or something, you can actually secure this piece here with super glue as well. Just one drop of super glue and it should stay there. But I mean, that's just for the worst case scenario. But anyway, dust cover parts are replaceable. So anything wrong, you have a chance to get it fixed. So right, so I'm just going to move on. Right, so just to make sure that the rod can goes in, because otherwise you might have to enlarge the hole a little bit. Right, so this goes in quite easily, so right, there's no problem there. So there should be a hook side. The hook side should face inside, because that's where the part latch onto the receiver itself, like this. So get dust cover on. Right, so when it's installed, it should look something like this. Now the spring, this hook part should goes to the receiver side, so that it will keep the dust cover spring open. So now how do you install this? So insert a bit of the rod in, and then the dust cover, then insert it, not all the way, till the exposed part. Now this is where you insert the spring, like this. Right, so this is how it should look like when the rod is installed. So now you should do a little test, just to make sure that the dust cover will stay open and the spring is doing its job. Now you can even close it. Now you can push it open with your fingers to reach inside the release latch in there. Now just push, it should open. Right, so once that's done, you can now insert the eclipse. Alright, so the little circlip clip here. So these little grooves is where the circlip goes in. So once that's done, your dust cover is now installed with the clips in. It will prevent the rod from coming off, and stays in place. Right, so that's done. So now we are pretty much done with the upper. Now the last step is the charging handle installations. Now this dummy bolt cover is the one that I mentioned in my previous BCM review. So this piece requires a little bit of a modification so that it will fit nicely within the shell. So the two parts that you need to do is three parts actually. The first, the cuts out here. If I compare, you can tell that this part is cut off. This part, I cut it off so that I can fit the. Let me just install this and show you how it looks like. So anyway, for the charging handle, you should get these few parts here. the spring, and then the screw for you to install this piece, and then the screw that goes to the upper receiver. So let me just show you how it looks like. So supposedly, this is how you install the dummy bolt cover. So you see these two holes here. Now it's supposed to goes in like so. This piece has a pin here. So this is how it looks like. You install that to here, like so. And then this part goes to the charging handle. Now again, this piece require a bit of modifications because it don't fit in nice, because you can tell this part is just a bit too long. So you will have to sand this part off and install it. I'll be right back. Alright, so once that's done, it should fit in nicely. Remember not to overcut it so that the integrity of this piece will not be compromised. So once that's done, it should fit in like so, nicely. Right, so so again, this piece, basically this pin goes into the hole here, like so. Then it goes on to the charging handle itself, like so. Right, after you tighten it, it should look something like this. Now, the problem, or potentially, because it might be because of the gearbox I use a FB3, so that could be a reason why it didn't work well. So anyhow, when that's done, it should look something like this. But the problem I noticed is that this charging handle piece is actually pushing the, how do you say that? It's actually obstructing the dummy bolt to slide freely. So I had issue with that. Now what I had to do was, I would advise you to, first I would advise you to enlarge these two holes, but not too much to the point where it can't be secured by the screw and the pin there. Just enlarge it a little bit so that you have more space to adjust. I mean, this is what I did with mine. I enlarged the holes. It's a bit larger. If I compare this way, you probably can't see from the camera, but yes, I did enlarge it a little bit. So once I adjusted that, what you want to do, basically, I will cut this part off. This part off, so that when this piece is installed, for example, this is the one that I've already modified. Right, I've modified so that this piece will not block by the dummy bolt here, because previously if you have this, it's all the way up here, so then the thing just doesn't work that well. This part and this part has a lot of frictions and stuff, so I cut that part off so nothing is blocking this piece. And then I also enlarge the holes so that I can actually push the dummy bolt up, so that it has a more snug fit and it will not obstruct by the gearbox or anything. And then if you have any parts up here, the dummy bolt, this part is jutting out, I will also sand this part, I will sand that part off so that nothing is blocking anything. Right, so I'm just going to do the modifications and I'll be right back. Alright guys, I'm back. I just did the minor modification to the dummy bolt. I didn't actually cut it out because I thought I want to keep this so that I can install LDT 2 or 3, and just to make sure that this is actually not a problem, or maybe this may be a problem specific to if you want to install FB3. So I leave this intact. So what I did was just I enlarged the 2 holes here and then make adjustment so that I also cut this part off to make it flush so that it doesn't scratch the shell. And just to make sure that this dummy bolt and the part here, the charging handle here, there's no gap in between, so it sits very flush. Now this usually will solve 90% of the problems. So if this indeed was a problem, then you can make the adjustment to cut it off as well, so that it looks like this here. So with the spring in stock, I'm going to now install the last part to the upper receiver. So you should be provided with this screw here. Now this screw is the part where the spring of the charging handle goes. So this goes into this little hole here. Right, so to insert, now this part is another part that's a bit tricky. Now you have to latch the spring to the screw there. So you have to make sure that your screw is not all the way in. You can probably do this with a screwdriver as well. So once that's in, you can now tighten the screw a bit just to make sure that the spring will not come off. Now you'll notice that pulling the charging handle doesn't actually open up the dust cover. Now this is quite normal because there's no gearbox inside that holds the charging handle, so it's quite a common problem. Now there's also another quick fix. You can actually use the file to make a little knob here where the dust cover lock here goes into, so then it will help opening the dust cover a lot more easier. You know what, let me just attempt to do that. Let me see if I can make it work. Alright, I'm back. So I did the mod and now it works quite well. So because there's no gearbox in, I'm just going to use my hand to push it. So there, now it opens. So what I did was just I used a file or Dremel to make a little knobs here, a little bit of a cuts out here. It's where the locks, the dust cover locks goes, and then now it should be able to open the dust cover reliably. Now remember not to overdo this. If you cut too much material off, then your dust cover lock will not be able to latch on anything. Then yeah, you have a permanently on dust cover. I mean, not that it's going to be a problem. Again, you know, serve absolutely no purpose. Just close and then open. I mean, if that's your thing, because it looks kind of cool when the dust cover opens when you pull the charging handle. I guess that's the only purpose. Alright, so and we are done actually. So where is the lower? So this is the lower. I mean, there's also the magazine, the catch. I mean, I can't really install this without the gearbox in, but to install this is very straightforward. So yeah, I don't think I need to make the instruction. So that's pretty much it, and we are done. Yep, without a gearbox in, you can't really get the right. And yep, that's it. It's been quite a long video, I guess. Yeah, it's not that simple to assemble this from scratch. So if you guys ordering the BCM shell from us and you don't think you want to deal with all this, you know, assembly of the small parts, when you purchase a shell, just leave a remark in the comment sections that you say you want the fitting to be assembled before we ship it to you, please do so. Right now, we'll do this for you for free, but only for limited time. For the first batch of the FTM, the BCM shell. So once the first batch is gone, then we'll start charging if you need this service. Alright. So anyhow, this has been a short video, not really short video, a video guide on assembling an FTM shell. So this guide again will be applicable, probably applicable to the other similar type of M4 gel blaster shell as well. So I hope you find this video guide useful, and if you have any questions, leave it in the comment section. I'll get to you guys as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys soon.